Thank you for having me here. I'm going to make a small presentation, and after the whole exciting Dharavi presentation, I hope everyone's a bit more awake after the food coma. So will you start? Yeah, perfect. My journey's been, I started out by studying history and went back to my school to teach. I was a kind of a lost 19-year-old, was trying to find my way. I went back to Rishi Valley to teach, which is a school which is more like a settlement where it grows its own food a lot, creates its own energy, and people of different diverse backgrounds come and study in the same class because the fees are based on parents' income. It's not a kind of thing that you see outside. And soon after that, I went and taught in 2 rural schools in Ladakh and Rajasthan. And I think in many ways that kind of defined the kind of person I became. I'm going to talk a little about naturally what were the projects that when I graduated from NID, Pradyumna was my teacher, so I was very happy, and those kind of memories that we had. Anuj was my batchmate, so seeing them here also brings back that kind of nostalgic memories. When I graduated, I soon after started working on exhibitions and museums because it combined my whole background in history with my background in doing work with exhibitions and spaces. I went to London, to the Victor and Albert Museum, to work here. I worked on other museum projects. I'm just trying to give a little background to kind of make apparent why some of the deliberations that happened and the kind of decisions that happened and the journey I took as such. These were more museum exhibitions, trying to kind of see how do you bring in education and outlook of how do you look at India and the West and the kind of combination that we all are a part of. So just different kind of projects that brought spatial design. I'm going to go later into 3 or 4 of these projects. So now I'm going to say much over here. We're doing a whole bunch of interpretive spaces, looking at jewelry making, looking at cultural identity, looking at regions. This is a jewelry gallery we're doing in Jaipur. We collaborate a lot with people. We very rarely work on our own bubble. This is a project with an architecture studio called Studio Lotus that does really inspiring architecture. We are working on 2 very exciting projects together. This is one of them. They're doing the entire building and we're doing the gallery. So I'm now going to dive into a few of the projects that we are doing. This is a project which is, this actually happened about 13, 14 years ago. This was a beautiful readaptive usage. So I tried to pick out projects that looked larger in the larger sense of not just regenerative, like I think Anuj spoke earlier and Nandita spoke earlier about what does it really mean to be responsible and to be sensitive, and how do you bring those kind of aspects into your work. So this was a beautiful building, historic site in Jaipur that was built in 1870s, and we were asked to readapt it to be having a different usage. So we started working with a whole bunch of artists from within 100 kilometers of Jaipur. So this was my first also attempt at working in Rajasthan and with miniature painting, with the kind of crafts of Rajasthan in a space that was about, that celebrated the kind of that era. So these were based on my drawings of different flowers that I came across, different monuments, and the kind of creepers that you see, which are ubiquitous in a lot of kind of Rajasthani Havelis and palaces, to the kind of thing that we started working with. So it goes back to the, if you remember the building that we see, the light changes from different parts to different parts. So you have the sunrise that starts on the other side and the sunset that comes to this side. So the light kind of cascades through the arches, and we thought that it would be lovely if it kind of makes artwork which almost feels transient. So it kind of glows as it comes in. And then the final artwork in the arches. And then we wanted to think about how did courtly arts function? The whole kind of patronage that there was of creating these beautiful paintings and beautiful artworks, which were created through albums, creating a whole series of mock-ups, and we wanted to be working like that. So from there, it went on to creating and conceiving art that would feel like it was made in the 19th century, but naturally these were very new pieces and all very collaborative. So there were about 50 craftspeople and artists who we worked with over 2 years to create these kind of spaces. There's a very beautiful word in Sanskrit called samaveg, which is aesthetic shock. So that every time you turn a little corner, you have a layered kind of experience of how you see the space. So the kind of details, here there are 7 different kinds of miniature school traditions that are combined to create this lovely feeling of the clouds and the joy of rain that comes to an arid part like the Western Rajasthan. The details of the kind of the celestial being showering rain, and then the whole joy of the rains that goes on, and then working with other craft forms from different parts of the state. This takes me to another kind of readaptive reusage project we did, which was this beautiful 100-year, almost 90-year-old building built by the same architect who made the Umaid Bhavan Palace in Jodhpur. So built in about 1930s. We were asked to redevelop this place as a museum based on a project that we done with Jal Mahal a good decade earlier. This is how the building was. It was sadly like a lot of our old kind of heritage, really kind of ramshackle, decrepit, and lying waste. And this is how it looks now. So the idea was not just about aesthetic colors, about making design look just classy. Those things are very simple. It's like, dressing well doesn't make you a good human being. So we were really looking at how do you tell a story that's riveting. And then we looked at how do you bring in the current services that we want. So if we were living or sitting in a place that was as humid as it is outside, it won't be salubrious kind of weather that we have right now here. So it was similarly over here, the way we brought in the air conditioning, the lighting, the furniture. So it was really to look at this whole building in entirety and really to tell a story. We set up a solar microgrid on the top. The entire building gets its own energy from what it produces, and the whole space itself. So it was like a typical regional museum, but hopefully trying to be a lot more accessible than others maybe. So yeah. So just different spaces, and we curated and designed it over a period of 2 years. And then we started working on the formal garden around it, because it situates itself within a 23-acre garden, and we wanted to create this 1-acre landscape garden and plant about 1,500 saplings. So we were successful in planting these 1,500 saplings that would create a lovely microclimate of flowering trees, and with the trees and flowers would come in the birds, the insects, and the people. Sadly, the elections happened, the government changed, so all the saplings were planted, and we don't know what happened after that. One strand of our work looks at this whole kind of cusp between art, architecture, design, and craft. We do a lot of installations around the world. This was something we did in the South Bank Centre, which is the largest cultural centre in the UK, and one of the most important cultural centres in Europe. We wanted to do something that celebrated the crafts and textiles of the country in a way that brought in tradition and modernity together. That's the piece when it's on a 7,500 square feet ballroom, and it spans almost about 13 meters by 2.5 meters. And when you draw up all the curtains that go to the Waterloo station, you actually see the translucency of it. And then the making of it. So from far, it looks like a flat piece. Then you have textiles, you have pleating, you have welded works, and all of them together create a little bit of magic. I got fascinated by crafts from the whole aspect of livelihood projects. A lot of us who were young and graduated from NID were idealistic. One of our favorite professors was MP Ranjan, who set up this amazing initiative called the Tripura Bamboo Mission. Tripura is one of the poorest states of the country. At that point, the entire GDP of the state was 30 crores. They put in 5 crores, imagine 1/6 of the GDP, in working with bamboo. So we felt immensely proud to be kind of part of that mission. I spent a month every year for 3 years on the Bangladesh-Tripura border, working in a small little village. We came up with a whole bunch of things to create. So we started working with a whole series of steam bending. So we thought, how do you bend something? What is the technology? Can we do something that can be done with 500 rupees? Can we look at one of the things that's ubiquitous across India is people like to drink tea, like a lot of us are here. There's a chai kettle. So we could get a kettle which will produce steam. We will use the wood chips from bamboo to create the fuel. We will take a large piece of bamboo to be the steam chamber, put in a hole, put in a sink pipe from the kettle, and actually bend the piece, and then bend it around really quickly on a kind of jig that we would have. And as a proof of concept, we wanted to create something that was quite lovely. So we created this tool, which was then, I'd won some kind of an award in London at the 100% design. So we had a stall over there where this was displayed. and Priya Paul of Park Hotel placed an order of 150 stools. So it was such a lovely story that here we were sitting in this little village in Tripura and trying to create something with 500 rupees, and then we could come here, make this thing, and have it go to different places. And it's naturally a knockdown. Here was another lamp that we did, which was then shown at the Victor and Albert Museum in London. But again, here we combined two different craftspeople to work with each other, a potter and a bamboo matting person. A person who would normally make a matting for a fence, here was making a matting for a lamp. And this takes me back to some other things, the whole idea of light. Light is such a lovely thing. You create darkness, you create a sense of discovery, but you also create a sense of depth. So with this whole sense of depth, we were creating a whole series of art installations. So someone spoke about, so sometimes you're lucky, you get a project which is indulgent and there's a wealthy man who wants to do. So this was actually in the Adani residence. So the gentleman who created a lot of the beautiful art that you see at the Bombay Airport, Rajiv Sethi, and I were commissioned to do a whole series of art in that incredibly affluent house. But this gave us a time and a chance to do something which was to really work with amazing people across the country. So this is looking at light as if it falls on water. We created this beautiful kind of a piece. And then we started translating it into very finite kind of grid. And then we took 28,000 pieces of fabric from 28 shades of fabric to create this incredible piece of textile, where we collaborated with a tailoring workshop, and about 35 tailors worked on this for 6.5 months to create this beautiful piece. And then we thought, how do we make this translate into something that's digital and create an installation, again for the South Bank Centre in London. So we repurposed it, did something else, and did something that could, again, function. We worked with other kind of craft projects. I find crafts to be something which is very exciting because I feel there's one way of looking at craft which is like a curio or a showpiece, and there's another way of looking at craft which is about utility. We like to also look at craft and how does it really come into our spaces. So this is for the Bangalore airport. We were asked by Sanjay Reddy, the then GVK airport head, to create a series of installations for Bangalore airport. I studied in Rishi Valley, which is near Bangalore. So Bangalore was the big city for us. We looked up to it in a big way. This was something to celebrate the South Indian heritage. So it looked at as if when you come in the new international terminal, this is new, this was in 2015-16. So then you have Garuda welcoming the passengers who come from the sky down to the earth and to the airport. And when they're taking off, you have all these celestial beings which are kind of welcoming you to the sky. And then we started working with Mysore painters in Mysore and Tanjore kind of Chola bronze casting technique near Tanjore in Tamil Nadu. And over 8 months, this was created. And this is what happened finally. So it's just a very different strand, actually, if you look from the bamboo. But the whole process of lost wax casting, a series of collaborations of spending time over a whole year and doing something which was there. I'm half from Orissa, half from Gujarat. This is one of the only projects we've actually done in Orissa. There are 2 projects. And we were looking at how do you really tell a story of spirituality and about sacredness and about the feeling of historicity to a lay audience. So we were asked to create an interpretation center on the Puri and Lingaraj temple. So we started creating a whole series of exhibits for the museum, for the center to be. So we started creating and working with almost about 100 craftspeople across Orissa. And here you have an amazing teak architectural model that's being created of the Lingaraj temple complex. And then we wanted people to understand, how do you really look at something? When you look at something, do you really understand what it is about? So we wanted people to understand that there are so many ways of looking, and that made us start creating short films and start creating content in a way that you understand. And then more exhibit pieces for the same interpretation center, working with a whole range of people, conceiving amazing works. And that brings me to a much more complex project that we did. This is, again, with Studio Lotus that we did. This is a huge building facade. We did an 8,000 square feet building design. We were asked to do something that was inspired by the cultural heritage of Orissa. And we thought, okay, what does it really mean? The textiles, the temple architecture, the vernacular architecture, the patterns that come from there, and how do you really see them in abstraction, and what kind of a feeling does it create? And how does then light, when you make it 3-dimensional, then how does light really flow onto it? So if you have it flat, or if you have it as a vertical, how does the light start playing? Because light is always dynamic. And then we wanted to create this in 4,000 blocks of stones across that 8,000 square feet, and over this span of about 8.5, 9 months. And then last week, finally the scaffolding started coming off. So it was quite exciting for us to see that. Also the first time we did something like that. And this brings me to the last part of my presentation, which is the most exciting and the most kind of nerve-wracking project we are part of. This was a building beautifully designed by B.V. Doshi, who sadly left us a couple of months ago. Doshi got the Pritzker, as we all know, but Doshi was someone we worked with close to a decade on this building on. Until house, there's Doshi working on the whole model and the building design, the way the entire space is planned, and we are working on the entire curation, design, and the entire space. And how do you tell that story of an art museum or a craft museum together, which has a collection as varied as this? And then we started planning the entire spaces. So we are right now at this stage of building the building, and hopefully in a year from now, we will actually open the building to public and hopefully have a very different kind of level of engagement of what art and crafts can do. And this is the last bit of slides that I want to show. We are doing a very aspirational museum for the new State Museum of Rajasthan in Jaipur. It's a beautiful 240-year-old building called the Savai Man Singh Town Hall, which is being refashioned into becoming the most important museum of Rajasthan. It's 80,000 square feet. It's got this beautiful series of volume that exists. This is the kind of design. We're redesigning the galleries of the spaces, celebrating the arts and crafts of Rajasthan, also working with contemporary technologies, what the gallery of the craft and textiles will look like, hopefully, what the gallery that showcases the heritage cities through miniature painting that looks like, and then looking at the whole idea of how do you tell those stories. So we want to create a whole series of audiovisual stuff. So how do you talk about habitats? So we're working with a huge bunch of amazing audiovisual developers. This is a company that works on Marvel films. So we've convinced them to actually collaborate with us to look at how do you tell that story differently. And how do you tell the story of Jaipur becoming a city in which is not a panel, which is just not a model, but how you understand that how was this amazing king about 250 years ago, how did he fashion this whole idea with a whole bunch of planners and to tell that story. And with that, I come to a close. Thank you very much.